Good afternoon from the Oklahomans Video Studio. I'm Dave Morris. It's Wednesday afternoon. That means we have a lunch date with our friend in Washington, D.C., Chris Castile, who covers politics from the Washington Examiner office there in D.C. Chris, how are you, sir?
I'm doing fine, Dave. How about yourself?
Doing well. Chris joins us, as he always does, via Skype, and we appreciate the conversation as we get caught up in things going on in the political world, both in D.C., nationally, and then locally here in Oklahoma. And today we're going to tie together the two of those together. But last night we saw Donald Trump in the running for the Republican candidacy for president basically wrap things up in Indiana. Senator Ted Cruz from Texas dropped out today. Governor Kasich dropped out from 16-1, talking about Donald Trump. Chris, how did we get here?
It was a long journey. It started, almost a year ago. I think it was June of last year. And I still remember where I was that day that he announced. I was actually on a treadmill in a fitness center, and I was on, watching on CNN on this big screen. And this woman next to me, she was probably early 30s, on the treadmill next to me, was laughing through the entire thing. And she just thought the entire thing was a joke.
Because she's thinking, this is the guy from The Apprentice. He wants to run for president of the United States. Well, so does my neighbor, right?
All I know is that she thought it was funny, and she giggled through the entire thing. And I'm sure a lot of people, did the same thing. I mean, Trump may have never thought that he had a chance. I just don't know. I don't, know him. I've never talked to him about it. But I mean, it really is quite remarkable. And, there are a lot of people squirming about it today. A lot of, conservatives squirming about it, Republicans squirming about it. And then there are others who are falling in line, who say, coming around to it. I think James Lankford, the senator from Oklahoma, was on the radio this morning saying, hey, I've always said I was going to support the Republican nominee, and, I'm going to do it. I got a quote from Senator Jim Inhofe, I'm in the anybody but Hillary camp, and I think a lot of Republicans will come around to that. I mean, what's their choice? This is the thing, the conversation I've had with people, since the beginning of the year about this, this whole fight for the soul of the Republican Party stuff.
But is that more of the pulse of the conversation here, and perhaps not in Oklahoma, but in other states where there's a re-election about to happen, is that more the case here for them? They're looking at their future campaigns and or the power in Congress?
Maybe. There's some of that. I mean, you're talking about control of the House and Senate.
Right.
I think there's obviously going to be some of that, but that's just rank speculation at this point too. I mean, I don't know who is qualified, what talking head out there is qualified to really give you a good prediction of what's going to happen in November right now. I mean, I don't know that many that have been right since last June. I mean, just none really. I mean, I try not to watch too much, talking head stuff, but I can't remember ever seeing one who predicted Trump was gonna, and now of course it's all about, the presidential map and how it's all gonna break, Hillary Clinton's way in the fall. And well, I guess we'll just see about that. I mean, none of these people have been right before. I spoke to the Tulsa Chamber of Commerce a couple of weeks ago when they were up here in D.C. at their lunch gathering, and the man who spoke before me was pretty top official here in the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, located here in D.C. 2 weeks ago, he was still predicting a brokered convention. It was absurd. I followed him and said, it's not going to be a brokered convention. I haven't thought that for months, actually, but I just don't know what anybody knows about what's going to happen in the fall. Nothing. I think they know nothing.
Last night in Indiana, we saw Bernie Sanders, Senator Sanders, get a win there. However, he's well out of the race delegate-wise as far as the numbers with former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. We talked a little bit about this last week, Chris, in that Trump and Clinton, very unpopular, yet those are the two candidates we're looking at here at the end.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely unprecedented that they are both so unpopular. And I think that's why makes it even more dicey to try to make any kind of predictions about what might happen in the fall. I don't know what most Democrats think. I haven't talked to Democrat one that was like, party activist or party official about what Bernie Sanders is doing. He's clearly eliminated. He's admitted it. There's no math that gets him there. And this is a thing. This is the thing to me about Bernie Sanders and all of this. He's not a Democrat. So, he has been an independent the entire time he's been in Congress. And I can't remember exactly what year that is. I mean, it's sometime since I've been here, Bernie Sanders came first to the House and then the Senate. So sometime in the last 26 years, he's been an independent the entire time. And he did caucus with Democrats. His views are closer to Democratic ones and Republican ones. But how much Democrats feel about, this kind of lingering on with Bernie Sanders at this point when he's not even a Democrat. He's not going to be the nominee, and that's not like some kind of prediction. That's math. That's arithmetic, as Bill Clinton called it in 2012.
We're chatting via Skype with Chris Castell. He's in Washington, D.C. I'm Dave Morris here in the Oklahomans video studio. I mentioned at the top of this, every week we chat politics with Chris on the national level and on the local level. And let's tie in the local level at this point with a story this afternoon that says Oklahoma Governor Mary Fallin is offering her enthusiastic endorsement of Donald Trump.
Yeah, she didn't do that early this year before the Oklahoma primary. She didn't endorse anyone, and maybe this is why. Maybe because there was always going to be probably a chance that whoever was the Republican nominee, unless it was Carly Fiorina, which it was not going to be, was going to have to cast around looking for a woman vice presidential candidate. Maybe why she kept her powder dry the entire time, whatever shortcomings Fallin might have, politics isn't one of them. I mean, she's never lost, right? Never lost a political race. So she knows what she's doing. And she didn't endorse, and now she's endorsing wholeheartedly after the fact, because she really apparently wants to be the running mate. She's actually, lobbying for the job now.
Story says she's honored to be mentioned as the vice presidential candidate, and she would be happy to consider such an offer.
Yeah, yes. And that's most people don't do that. I mean, most people who know that they're being vetted, who know that they have a chance, kind of really, quiet about it. I mean, she seems to be going whole hog for this, which, again, we talked about this last week. I mean, I do not think, and as hesitant as I normally am to make some kind of bold prediction, because I don't want to be one of those talking heads that's wrong. It's not my job to do that anyway. I just don't see it. Just from my experience, I don't see why she would be picked. I mean, we talked about last week. We talked about kind of the basics. You apply, if you apply just kind of the conventional wisdom of it, does she help him in any state that he needs help in? I don't think so. Does she have foreign policy, national security experience? I don't think so. Although the New York Times this week, and I laughed out loud when I read it, said that in her long time in government, she has focused on national security. And I was like, what? Where did you get that even? I mean, is this when she was lieutenant governor? Because that's where she spent most of her time in government, as lieutenant governor. I think she was in the state house for a while, and then now 6 years as governor. I was here for the 4 years that she was in the U.S. House, and I'm just going to say this straight. I'm not trying to be, smart alecky or mean or anything. She was in the minority. She spent for her first term, the first 2 years, basically trying to find her way around, and the next 2 years running for governor. She was not a national security person up here. How do I know? Because I know them. I've covered them. I mean, going back to Dave McCurdy, more recently, I mean, the whole time, really, Jim Inhofe. That's a national security person. Steve Russell, Jim Bridenstine, Tom Cole on the spending side. Those are people that have focused on national security. I think, and Mary Fallin was not. I'll just leave it at that. But the other thing about that is, I mean, she doesn't bring those, conventional things along with her. And plus, so now, you would think that if you don't have those things, if you don't help in a certain state, if you don't have national security, foreign policy experience, you should at least have like some long record of achievement as governor, especially if you've been in for 6 years. I'm not, I don't cover her day to day anymore, but I'm just not sure that you want to go onto the national stage right now, slashing education, slashing Medicaid, slashing everything in the state, and hold that out. Here's where I am as governor right now. My state government is kind of falling apart around me. that's not a ringing endorsement, especially slashing education. I mean, I don't think people think that's cool, anymore. That maybe I'm kind of biased. I live in a state, Virginia, in an area of Virginia that would never do that. But I don't think that is like seen as a great thing for conservatives to do anymore, is to slash all your state services. So anyway, I also kind of wonder, what's the first story that comes out about first daughter? Is it the mobile home on the mansion lawn, or any number of other stories about her that the Mary Fallon has never undergone scrutiny by the national press. We all know the difference.
Governor Fallon has said she has not been contacted by Trump or anyone in his campaign about running as vice president, just to throw that out there. A lot of money has been spent, getting back to the Donald Trump thing. I think I saw $74 million in anti-Trump campaign. That's a lot of money thrown against him.
And for what?
Yeah, I guess that's kind of my point, is like, wow, what did that buy? Perhaps more exposure.
Yeah, I mean, it bought the weeping that a lot of these, conservatives are doing right now. I mean, I just think there was just nothing predictable about what happened. And I'm not trying to, in any way kind of criticize the people that were, saying Trump would be out after a month or two, because that's how it would have gone with anybody else. There was just absolutely no predicting how people reacted to him, which is why I'm just so leery of any kind of predictions about this fall. I mean, you're already hearing, well, look at these states that the Democrats have won. I think there's 19 states that President Obama won both times. And that's being used as kind of just sort of the base Democratic vote now. So he wins this 19, or if Secretary Clinton wins these 19 that Obama won twice, all she has to do is win Florida, and she's got the presidency. Well, but what if she doesn't win those 19? I mean, I don't think it's a lock that she does. I mean, there's going to be some of them. California is obviously, New York are obviously going to go for Hillary Clinton. I mean, I think, but I would just think some of those might be in play. This is just such an unusual election. You do have this kind of convergence of this, and it's on both sides. It's Sanders and it's Trump, and the anti-trade, anti-Wall Street, anti-establishment, anti-rich guy, anti-people telling us, what to do sentiment out there on both sides. And, how does Hillary Clinton counter that? Her husband pushed through NAFTA, which is probably exhibit A for a lot of people who really distrust free trade. And she made, hundreds of thousands of dollars speaking to Goldman Sachs. I mean, that's the stuff that Bernie Sanders is harping on. Donald Trump is gonna hit her on that stuff too. And it's gonna bring out, there's a lot of this talk today about, Republicans going to Hillary. I think they ought to be talking too about Democrats going for Trump. I mean, we all remember the Reagan Democrat back in 1980. I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of Trump Democrats this time too, because of those very things that we're talking about, this kind of economic displacement, that people feel, in their guts about this country right now. I don't think they line up to vote for, Mrs. Clinton, Secretary Clinton this fall. But, I mean, and I think that's, a lot of the people that I'm around up here that criticize Trump or, don't seem to understand this. I mean, they've kind of lived their lives in this sort of DC, New York City corridor. And there's an aspect of this I think they may never understand. I mean, a lot of people may see this Trump nomination, this Trump popularity as like one more step toward idiocracy, but I think what a lot of people feel about, a lot of Republicans feel, is that what would be idiotic is voting for establishment Republicans again, who always seem to be lying about what they're going to do. That's what they are rejecting. They don't want to hear it anymore. They've just had it, with Republican promises that aren't fulfilled.
And what we saw over the past few months was a record number of Republicans going out and voting, and they're casting their votes for Donald Trump. Shifting gears to the weekend, Chris, what do you have on your plate that you're working on?
Just as there is this dissension in the National Republican Party, there's there's quite a bit in our congressional delegation. Actually, kind of an unprecedented amount since I've been up here. Really, a lot of tension and distrust in the Oklahoma congressional delegation, which, by the way, is all Republican. All 7 members of the delegation are Republicans, and there's and I'm going to talk about that in my story this weekend. And so how that's manifested itself in the last few weeks, and what we might see in the next couple months because of it.
You a big Star Wars fan, Chris?
I'm absolutely not a fan of Star
I'm looking at your Twitter account and you're like, how many accounts do I have to unfollow to get rid of this May the 4th stuff?
I have a lot of friends who are.
Apparently so. Chris, we always appreciate catching up. I enjoy the conversation. It's great analysis. Thank you so much for your time.
Glad to do it, Dave. Thanks.
More political coverage from Chris Castile can be found online at newsok.com and in the Oklahoman.